Hi everybody, welcome to the Manifold channel. Let's take a few minutes to look at the wonderful new capability to dynamically edit traverses in Manifold Release 9. We're looking at Release 9 and we're working with a project that was the same data set that was used for the traverses example that's in the user manual. And what we have here is a map with two layers, a Google Maps satellite layer in the background and this parcels layer in the foreground that has this line in it, which is starts from here and goes around there around the border and makes a closed figure. And that's called a traverse. Now, why is it called a traverse? Let's take a look at it and find out. If I alt-click on it, on that figure to pick it, the info pane switches to the values tab. I'm going to switch to the coordinates tab. And in the coordinates tab, by default, it'll show you the coordinates of each of these vertices that define the figure, the line figure, including those which are anchor points that define the circle arcs. And there's 3 circle arcs, one here, one there, and one there. The rest are straight line segments. And if we want to see why it's called a traverse, we can click here to say Show Traverse. Traverses are used in surveying in the United States, and what they're a way of describing line figures, either for lines or for areas, where instead of describing a segment by the coordinates at the endpoints that define it, it starts by starting at a particular point. SP is for starting point, which is right here. Then it says for this segment there, DD means direction and distance. Go in the 63.5 degree direction for 271 feet. This is used as units of measure feet, and that's that segment. And then for the next segment, go in the 72.8 degree direction for 154 feet, and so on. And so the idea is it's basically like saying a route that you take to draw this figure. And if everything is said accurately, at the end of the route, you should end up exactly where you started, which is often not the case in surveying, and there's tools to help fix that. For example, this one, the last segment, goes a little bit farther. I zoomed in there by right-clicking and dragging. Let's go back to the fully zoomed-in view. It's kind of a hassle if you made a mistake here. For example, in this last segment right there, if instead of writing 286 feet or 287 feet as the instructions that you might have been reading off a meets and bounds or a plat description said, you accidentally entered something else and you want to correct it. Well, in prior times you couldn't do that because once you had a traverse, that was it. Manifold adds this kind of unique capability to dynamically edit it. So let's say we want to alter this last segment right there. And instead of a length of roughly 287 feet, what we're going to do is we're going to make it 150 feet. So we're going to go in the distance, in the direction of 310 degrees, but for only 150 feet. I double-clicked on that row, I edited the value, and I'm going to click Enter. And voila, you can see that the endpoint changes. And if we wanted to change it, let's say this is the way it came in, and we realize, hey, wait a minute, this figure isn't closing. Let's change this. Let's change that back to, let's say, 287, approximately what it was. So there, it's back there, and it's that easy to edit traverses. Now, the thing about traverses, though, is if you edit any one of these segments here, everything that follows changes. For example, let's take a look at this big one here, this long one here, which is this segment right there that goes for 810 feet. Suppose I edit that, so I change that to writing. Let's make it 600 feet. And you can see what happens is that if this segment right here gets 200 feet shorter, then everything that follows is off as well. So that's one rule. That's whenever you're working with traverses, whenever you edit one of the traverses, that's kind of higher up in the chain, that's earlier in the chain of how the traverse is defined, everything that follows is going to be changed as well. So let's change that back to whatever it was. I think 810, something like that. Yeah, close enough. So you can see that that's getting it back. Now, a common thing that we might find is how to close a traverse once you get it wrong. And there's 2 ways to do that. The simplest way, which I will show you first, and let's right-click here so you can see the menu Undo Changes. So we're not going to make any changes to this figure. We're going to leave it back the way it is. Let's start by drawing a new figure, and I'll just pan the map over here, and I'll draw the new figure over here. We can edit these values dynamically. I'm going to click here on the cursor mode, choose Create Line. I'm going to start creating a line. Let's say I wanted to create a line here using this new Edit Traversal capability to, instead of clicking here on the right, I want to actually do it parametrically. Let's click on Coordinates, and we'll click on Traverses so we can show what we're doing here in terms of traverses. And notice there's a starting point that I clicked. Let's say I want to draw a line here that's 500 feet to directly due east. Well, I'll just click it right there anywhere where I want, and now I'll edit this. So the direction I want is 90 degrees, and I want it 500 feet. 90 degrees is due east, make it 500 feet. So there it is. There's the line that we want. Let's zoom in here a little bit. Notice with Manifold you can interactively change things as you're editing. And now let's create another segment. Let's put it down here. I want to go due south. Let's go 180 degrees south. This direction is 180, and south. Let's make it 300. So there's that line there. Let's put another line here. Let's go due west, and let's make that 270. And west is make it 500 feet. And now I can, if I want, I can click up here. So, for example, let's say I overshoot here. Let's say I make a mistake. Well, no. Let's say I do it this way. I'll click the space bar to click on that tab to make it put the focus back in the map. I'll click the space bar to turn on snapping, and I'll click that, and you can see that it automatically puts that last segment there for me. And you can see that's DD0300. If I want, I can close that branch. Let's end the current branch. And now let's draw another branch over here. I'll draw this as a multi-branch figure. And let's say I'm following some, I'll show you how the close gap thing works. Let's say I'm working on a traverse, and I'm following a plat map description where I've faithfully entered all these values taken from the plat map description, for this branch here. And I'm thinking that's all okay, that's all correct. And the last one I click there, and then when the last one I click, and I follow all these instructions faithfully, and I discover, wait a minute, that's not exactly closed. That's actually slightly off. You can see how the figure isn't quite closed there. And what I'd like to do is I'd like it to close. Well, how can you do that? I could have forced this by just closing this last segment right there, but that would have assumed that all the errors that have been made in the plat map description, all these values for angles and distances, all those were perfect, and only the last one was an error. But that's not real life. What happens in real life is when a surveyor is surveying a property like this, and there's a bunch of different angles and distances. Typically, if there's some slight error that's being made, the errors are being made on all the angles and all the distances. And the way you can close this figure by distributing all the errors around is, at this point, we right-click, and here there's a choice: end current branch plus close gap. If I do that, what it's going to do, notice how that whole figure shifted. What it did is starting with the starting point, same starting point, it adjusted all these angles and distances using the so-called compass rule, which is a fairly complicated mathematical algorithm that distributes the errors. It assumes that errors in angles and distances were kind of evenly made, throughout this entire figure, and it distributes them like that. Okay, so that's how that close the gap thing works. Let's do a few more things here. Let's undo changes so I don't actually want to draw that figure. Let's learn how to use the insert coordinates mode and how that changes depending on how that sticks around or doesn't stick around depending on what we're doing. Let's create a new figure here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this using two branches. And here I'll just click end current branch. Let's move over here to the coordinates thing so we can display, so we can see the traverses as we're making them. And now I'll create another branch here on this side. Gotta click the mouse and make it stick there. All right, and let's end current branch, and so now we have a coordinate mode. Let's save changes, and now let's pick this object. I'm going to go back to the default cursor mode, and let's pick it. It's an object that's already been created. And so what I can do now is, as you know, with editing in Manifold, you can do a lot of cool stuff. Let's show traverse, and let's click on here, and let's continue this branch. So I'm still in insert mode, and let's put that about there. And if I like, I can edit this, so I can change that to a distance of, well, let's make it 375 feet, and let's make that angle of about, let's make it an angle of about 60, something like that, just to guess. Okay, so we moved it right there, and notice that we're still in insert coordinates mode. I can still click here. The idea is, since we just changed something back here, we don't need to change the coordinates mode. Let's go back into move coordinates mode. So we're now out of insert coordinates mode, and if I like, I can now insert coordinates somewhere like, let's say, like right here. Okay, and what I can do is on this segment, right-click and choose Insert Coordinates. And now notice that I can move this around, and let's say I'm going to put a coordinate right here. And now let's say I want to edit that coordinate, and where I'm going to edit that coordinate, I'm going to make this a shorter distance. Let's make this a distance of 200 feet. So that'll move this coordinate that I just created backwards a bit. And it does two things. First, it moves that coordinate backwards a bit and makes the segment shorter. And since this is a draw by the numbers, and like we're walking a path, if this segment is shorter, all these other segments have to move over to the right as well. And because of that, we're no longer in insert coordinates mode. Notice how it's not rubber banding around like it was before. And that's because we moved that. Now suppose if we're back here and we're adding coordinates to the end of the thing, and what I can do is here, let's delete coordinate, and let's delete this coordinate as well. And now let's continue the last branch. So now we're in insert coordinates mode again. So I can click here, and then I can click there. And if I want to edit that last figure, I can make this a bigger number, a bigger distance. Let's make that 350, and the angle is going to be let's make the angle 45. So you can see we're still in an insert coordinates mode. If I wanted to, I could click here and then command to close or whatever. Why is that? Why are we still in insert coordinates mode here and it's still rubber banding? Because it's the last coordinate in the figure. In fact, if we came over here, because I can still edit all this stuff on the fly. Like suppose I wanted to edit something over in here, even while we're in the middle of insert coordinates mode. Suppose I wanted to edit that right there, and I wanted to change that to being a different value. Let's make that a shorter distance. Let's make it only 250. Notice how that moved that. I can actually change one of the figures in the earlier branch, and I'm still in insert coordinates over here. The idea of Manifold again is saying, oh, all right, if you don't want to leave insert coordinates mode, you don't have to. It's still there. You can still keep drawing it. But if you noticed an error that you made in something earlier, like in one of the earlier branches, you can change that. I'll still leave it in insert coordinates mode because it didn't change any of these segments that I'm working with here. While as in contrast, if I change this segment right there and made that like a 50 or something, let's make it 100. 50 will make it too small. I'm still in insert coordinates mode because it's still in this figure here because I'm still at the end of it. But if I ended that and I'm in move coordinates, and then I started coming here and decided to insert here, let's insert coordinates there, and I put one there, and then I changed something like like say this figure, this value right there, instead of making it 400, let's make that 300. That would reposition the segment that I'm actually actively working with, and that would cut me out of insert coordinates mode. That's all that means. Basically what it boils down to is that as long as you're inserting coordinates to the end of the figure, you can pretty much do whatever you want within that figure or the other ones, and you're still going to be in insert coordinates mode. If you are in insert coordinates mode in a figure and you change something in one of the others, like here, let's make this 300. As long as you're not doing something that affects, the actual segment, being upstream that you're working with, you're still in that insert coordinates mode. So if all that sounds confusing, the plan is to go through this in a video a couple of more times. Let's zoom over here to this figure, where we have a classic situation. I'm going to teach you how to do one last thing here, which is a fairly sophisticated thing, but it's necessary. Suppose at the end of the day when we import a traverse specification, which we can do, and like we did with this one, we import a traverse specification, or we faithfully draw it following all the rules, and we realize that, dang, the thing didn't close. I have this problem right here, which you can see where it did not close. And so obviously there's something wrong. There's probably a series of systematic errors, as happens. I mean, this is an imperfect art, and between the surveying, of all this, how it worked, or whatever, the figure did not close. How do I get this figure done? And I'm zooming back and forth here with the wheel mouse. I apologize if that's annoying. How do we get this figure closed now that it's already completed? I mean, we know how to close it if we're actively working on it, but how do we do it if the thing is already done? That takes a little bit of inside baseball knowledge. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to alt-click on that to choose it, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the traverse. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click and copy this last row. So now I've got this last row copied. That's where that one actually was. Okay, now I'm going to right-click on that last item. I'm going to delete coordinate, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue branch. So it's as if that coordinate was never there before. And what I'll do here is I'll draw that approximately somewhere in the area, and I'm going to right-click on that, Control A to select all, and click paste. So what I've just done is, and now I'm going to enter. What I've just done is I've kind of reproduced that last component, but I've redone that last component in the context as if I was drawing all this all over again. And now what I can do is kind of peacefully and calmly click end current branch and close gap, and there it'll adjust the figure for me. Notice that the figure was pretty close to begin with. Now it's completely closed. If you actually zoomed in, you can see where the old figure is drawn in black and green, and you can see the new one is closed. There are a few locations where it's where it's a little bit different because the cumulative changes in all the different angles and so forth move some of the lines around, but it has evenly distributed all the reposition all of the different traverses to following the so-called compass rule to assume the angles and distances and so forth were kind of, if there were any errors, that they were evenly distributed errors. So that's how you edit an existing item. Anyway, what we've learned in this video is a few simple things. I'm going to undo changes here. We've learned how to add coordinates and to edit traverses on the fly. We've learned how to use that capability to like I'm going to do right here, to manually enter lines. So let's we want to make a line 90 degrees. That's 400 feet long. We can just do that like that. We've learned how to how the insert coordinates and all that other deal, all the other stuff works. We've learned how to make adjustments and how we can work with multi-branch figures. And so there's no mystery as to how we can edit them on the fly. We can always switch back and forth. We can edit coordinates and however we choose. We can use either this style of editing or we can use traverse style of editings, which is all pretty cool. There's very, very few GIS systems that can do that. I don't think ARC can do it. Manifold can. And we learned how to use the compass rule, both to on the fly as we're making figures and closing them, or for figures that have already been existed. I hope you've enjoyed this introduction. This is a very new capability in Manifold, so it's something that I think will be very useful, especially to people that are involved in surveying. But as you can see, even if you just want to draw figures in a parametric way by distance or angle, you can use this capability to do that as well. Thanks for watching. Tell your friends, and goodbye from Manifold Land. Well, that was fun. If you want to see more, visit us at www.manifold.net. As always, Manifold delivers the world's most advanced, highest quality spatial products for GIS and DBMS at a low price that you can afford. Once again, that's manifold.net. See you soon.